All right, everybody. How about now? Can you hear me? Again, this is a new program, so I'm just learning with Meld Studio and my Elgato Wavelink. You can do the best you can with testing, as many of you know, and then the real world sets in, and you end up having things not work quite the way you planned. But everyone's able to hear me now okay, it looks like. I'm seeing that in the chat. Do apologize if the chat is not showing up for some reason. The overlay doesn't seem to be working the way that I want it to. If that changes, hopefully it'll pop up. I can see it, so I will try to call out anything as we go forward. I did try to get it in there in the overlay, and it looks like it started to work, but then kind of has some issue going. But anyway, let's not worry about that right now. Let's talk more about why we're here today. And we're here for a couple of reasons. And yeah, thanks. You like the overlay, Rod. First of all, let's say welcome to everybody. Thank you again. 11 of you already concurrently in the chat. Aaron, great to see you. Christina Ray, great to see you. Rod, as always. Fazal, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Uh, Kursplat, anyone else who's jumping in, thank you all for being here. This is kind of an important announcement, something I've been working on, as many of you who may have followed me for a long time know, is this idea of an online course around organization, second brain systems, things of that nature. And we're going to talk about some of that today, but I also want to talk about some of the big news that's come up with the Supernote and how it has kind of upended e-ink here lately with some of their newest changes regarding the interface, the mana. Well, actually, it's for all of their devices. The only thing not on all devices right now is InkFlow, which we'll get into here after a bit. But feel free, drop things in the chat. I am monitoring it, as I said. The biggest issue is for some reason the overlay is stuck, and I don't know how really to get that working as it should be for some reason. But we will go on. All right. So, what is this thing? What is this course? And as I mentioned, any of you who followed me for a while know that this is something I was asked about probably about 6 months ago. And it was, I thought, well, I don't know if I have time. I don't know if it's something that would have any real demand out there. And, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I did release a blog on it this morning. So actually early this morning, but it's now live. If you go to the website, you'll be able to see the blog. And let me switch over here to my screen capture so that we can, I got to get Meld Studio off of there. Move it over out of the way. And we will go to the website. So give me just a second here. All right. So for those of you who haven't seen my website, I think most of you know by now, but I run my website through Obsidian. And this is something that I've been doing for a while. Really love the program. It's part of the Second Brain piece. But I now have this current blog post up, and let me go ahead and get this out from underneath that overlay for now. And as a matter of fact, I'll turn off the overlay so that we don't have that showing anything. And what you'll see here is the blog post. And I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I do want you to know that I went through a lot of explanation and back end as to why I thought this was important, why I decided to do it, what is going to be included, what the cost is. Just so you know, to be fully transparent, anyone who is a supporter on Patreon, you don't pay anything for this. It is included with that $5 supporter tier. Again, that's $5 a month. The supporter tier is the highest of the two tiers. And anyone who is either an insider on YouTube or on Patreon gets a 20% discount. So anyone who wants to join in can request that discount code from me. I will give that to you and you can purchase the course. It is a lifetime membership to the course, so you won't have to worry about when I update things, change things, all of that cool stuff. That's included. So anytime there's an update, whether it be to the modules themselves, to the content within them, new links added, all of that will be contained. But here you can see kind of the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about different cognitive approaches to organizing information, so different ways that you go about it. We're going to talk about your own approach currently and then what that may look like in the future. What are the things that are challenging you? We're going to talk about technologies that facilitate organization and productivity. So that idea that I've been kind of proposing for the last over a year now of intentional technology. And then we're going to start evaluating whether or not you want to go down this road of second brain systems. Is it right for the individual needs of each student? For some people, things like Obsidian are wonderful. They are absolutely great. I think this way, so it tends to make a lot of sense for me. Other people may be very much more linear and folder driven and based. And then finally, you're going to develop an individualized approach to your own organization and being more productive. So those are the high level goals. And then you'll see the 9 modules here. So it's very important that, as we go through this, that you kind of get a sense for why I did this. And again, as far as cost, this was something Melissa and I talked about quite a bit because I wanted it to be accessible. I didn't want it to be one of these things where, oh yeah, pay us $500 and, we'll give you this, short course on organization. This is 9 modules and I'm going to roll them out initially, one a month starting today. If you sign up today, you get the first module. And then all the way through for the next at least one a month. If I can accelerate that over the summer, I will. But I don't want to promise something I can't deliver on. And as all of you know, I have a full-time job. I teach part-time. I do a lot of things. One a month I can do, and I can get that out there. So to me, that was a realistic way to do this. But again, as it evolves, as it changes, as it gets updates, you will get all of that. And I think it's a recognition of the time and investment that I put in there, but also what you get for this is a lot more access and individualized attention I can't give on a YouTube channel. I reply to every comment now. I engage as much as I can, but there's no substitute for something hosted in the Google Classroom or any learning management system environment where you can add questions, you can have comments in a dedicated discussion board with other people, you can share files, you can really kind of maximize that potential. But please, everyone over in the chat, hop in, ask any questions. I wanted to get this out there first because I think it's really important, and I think it's something that is kind of a passion of mine. It always has been, but it's also something that will evolve. So at the end of each module, there'll be feedback. I'll be asking all the time for you to be able to share with me how you feel about the course, how it's going, things that can be improved, things that can be changed. All of that's going to be really important. And I do want to show you how you actually purchase this. So if you go over to Patreon and let me view as, and you go to the shop. And when you go onto the shop, what you're going to see is the featured content. So here is the actual course. It does say it's a PDF. The PDF is kind of the way you had to set it up on Patreon. I just want to be clear that it's not just a PDF. The PDF is what you're going to see as far as it gives you the code. So it gives you the code to be able to join and engage with the class. You'll see the description here, some of the things we're going to cover, and then you'll have a buy now button. And then that PDF that you will download will give you actual access to the course with the course link and code. And then again, if you're an insider, email me first. I'll give you a discount code for 20% off of this. And then there are going to be options, if you have an organization and you want to do something in bulk, we can have a talk about how much it would cost from there. But are there any questions right now that I can answer in the chat? I'm not currently seeing anything in the chat, but I want to make sure that I'm answering anything that may be there. And I learned from my friend Rod to make sure that and actually She Inc. that tunes into his channel quite a bit, to make sure it says live chat and not just top chat. So that's something that can be a little bit daunting when you're trying to run a stream, even with multiple windows like I have. So any thoughts, any initial reactions that you all have? I'm going to pull this down here out of the way because I do want to show off my graph here in Obsidian and have a brief discussion because, one thing that now I've got to move myself again because I forgot they've got that little icon floating. So let me just move myself over here. All right. So we'll move myself over here. And I do want to talk a little bit about kind of mind mapping versus what Obsidian and its graph do, just because I want to give some context. There's also a video going to be coming out in the next couple of days with this concept as well. But this is one of the things you can look forward to when we talk about the whole idea of a second brain, the whole idea of getting organized. But I want to show you just with my website, which is kind of nice when you host it in Obsidian, you can view your graph. So if you look here, this is going to show the graph of the website, the entire graph. And the reason this is really cool is that, no problem, Kursplat. Thanks for jumping in, and hopefully you can join back in. We're going to try to keep this to an hour, but we may go over a little bit. But what I want to do here, and the reason that I'm showing this to you all is, and Rod had a great discussion on what is a mind map, and he and his group were talking about all of these different components. Notebook LM has come out and said, oh, you don't need Obsidian anymore because you have a mind map. They're not the same thing. And I want to talk about why. A mind map is a high level, I am brainstorming, iterating. I want to get topics down. I want to get buckets that are going to contain specific things. It's a non-linear way to outline. That's the best way I can explain it. It's the way that I've used for years since I learned about it in my adult ed program, and they called it cognitive mapping. Same thing, a mind map, cognitive map, same term. What's interesting is that Obsidian really isn't that. They have their Canvas feature that kind of replicates that, and you can create workflows and nodes and do a lot of those things. But what they don't have is what Obsidian does. And Obsidian, and let me show you, we'll zoom in here. And I'm using my library initially as kind of the way of showing this. If I go here, I can see from a topic view, and I can see all of the different connections to different topics. And from that topic view, what the individual case studies are, or I mean, not case studies, the individual books, the individual resources are. So as my library, all of that is there. Then you will notice that there are some things that have other connection points. So if I zoom out and then I go here, you'll see that it goes to the author, and this shows you all of the books that are connected to authors and all of the books that he's written. Now, what's interesting about this, and again, feel free to ask questions because it's important here. All of this gets created manually. And if you go over here to my blog, you'll see the same thing, but then you'll see that it also goes into other places and can connect to other things. So if I mention a book title in a blog, then it's going to, and I drop a link to my authors or my topics page in my library, you're going to see that connection. So it's a real world way of tying in things in the moment. And that's why Obsidian is so cool. And that's why Obsidian is different. And as I'm writing a note, as I'm creating a page, as I'm doing anything, I can tag something else. I can turn it into uh, a relational database on the fly. Now, I've said that at least right now, generative AI can't do that. It can see surface level correlation. It can see that, hey, these two sources are in the same bucket, so I need to say that there's a relationship there. But it can't get to that granular level and say, I am talking about adult learning theory and I want to talk about Malcolm Knowles. So I'm going to connect Malcolm Knowles, the author, and his book in this sentence and then have it connect back to that note all at the same time. Or I want to follow up with someone, or I want to create something new so I can create it as an empty placeholder, go back, click it, and fill in the details later. Again, it's all about not breaking flow. It's all about not getting yourself out of that headspace. And like I said, I'm doing a dedicated video on this, and I've done some others before, but I just wanted to cover that really quickly. And my website gives me a good way to kind of do that. But just to show you how complex this can get, let me get out of the graph view here. So, and anytime you want to see that graph view, you can. The graph view, quite frankly, isn't as important as the what's really going on behind the scenes. The graph view is the visual representation of that. So, good question, Rod. Rod asked, and since I know the chat's not doing its thing correctly, I'm going to have to repeat the questions today. So, Rod asked, do you create your notes in Obsidian as well? I don't create them in Obsidian for the most part. I can, there's that option. But what I do is there's a Supernote plugin. And so I create all of my notes in real time recognition. And by doing that, it puts them all as text notes in the background. All of that runs in the background. And then when I pull those notes into Obsidian, it creates a note. It pulls in the handwritten text and the converted text, and then you can turn those into Obsidian notes with the click of a button, and you can add the PDF version of the handwritten notes to that. And I'll show that here in just a second, so you'll kind of see what that looks like. I got to be careful sometimes when I'm doing certain things because I don't want to show something from work that may be private. But I'll be able to do that here in just a second. But I do want to show you. So now I've switched over, you'll see on the screen, to Obsidian itself. And you'll see that I've got all of my website here on the left expanded. And so that's the entire website. Now, remember that graph view we saw? Basically, if you look here in the bottom right corner, you're going to see that's the website. All of this red, all of these other connections are my work notes. So they're different ways of thinking about everything that you're doing. And if you watch Nick Milo, which I would highly suggest, Linking Your Thinking, Nick Milo is phenomenal at explaining what Obsidian is and how it can be used in a very effective way. But he uses this idea of a map of contents. So you'll see right here, this says the Valpo map of contents. And all a map of contents is a way to use a note-based structure to structure out, replicate in some ways a folder. And then, but instead of files, it's notes. And those notes then become living, breathing things. And it's really cool. I mean, again, I'm a big fan of Nick's, and I think he does a great job of different things. Let me move myself over here again out of the way. And so that's why this is really important. And you'll notice here that a lot of these notes are like here, these are live notes to other things within the directory, but then there are also external links. And all of this is done in Markdown. So it's a pretty cool process. I like it a lot. For someone who is very much a nonlinear thinker, this makes a lot of sense to me. It's not something that you just turn off this chat overlay since it's not working. It's not something that is going to make sense to people who are highly structured. Then again, and that's something we'll talk about, if you sign up for the class, we'll get even more in depth on this. Yeah, Rod says it's got him excited about using this. It's very graphical. So 100%. So what I'm going to do is I will hold on just a second. If you all will bear with me, I am going to go into a note and try to find something that's a good example of this so that I can show you what it actually looks like in real time. And I'll use work notes, but not one that's basically it's a conference note. So let me get in here and see if I can find something that will work. And don't get me wrong, the text conversion is not perfect. So you're never going to have like this one-to-one perfect thing, but that's what you go in and you polish up, and that's why it's important. So here, and let me pop this in so that we can show it. So let me get back over to my screen here. So when you pull something into Obsidian through the Supernote plugin, what you're going to get, and you have to customize these views, so I don't want you to think that there's no work involved to make this happen. But if you look here, you'll see that I have the text that came in with this particular note. Of course, there's going to be some duplication because the header, I do this just on the Supernote side, so I can delete that from here if I want. And then you're going to see the basic notes. I didn't have a lot in this particular one because, quite frankly, there were a lot of extra resources. But now what I can do is I can go back to those slides, I can pull in those resources, and I can round this out. So remember, my Supernote is my handwritten note taker. That's what its primary function is. I'm not doing things that I would use a computer for on the Supernote. But you'll notice that the text came in, it came in written as I wrote it. Most of it's pretty much there. But for example, this is about followership. And once I get this in here, and let me go back, this is how it actually comes in initially. So when it pops in, you get these options. You can attach your markdown, which is what I did that converted this text to something editable. You can attach the markdown and images if you prefer to work with images, or you can attach a PDF. I tend to do the markdown and the PDF. And then that way, what I can do is I pull in the PDF and have it down here as a reference. You don't have to do it that way. It's all up again to what you think is the best thing, but pretty cool. And now let's say that I want to make sure that we're talking about followership. If I want to add in a book here, so I'll go in, and this is where Markdown comes in, and I go the art of followership. Now watch this graph over on the right. When I click this, we now have another dot that has been added as a connection. Now, I'll probably go back in and change this up and do a few more things, but I can then add in, let's say I did that, and that takes me to all the authors of that book, which include Ira Chaleff. But let's go ahead and we will put Ira Chaleff. And when we do that, now you'll see yet another connection point pop up. Pretty awesome. And you just do that throughout. So as you are writing, as you are thinking, as you are going, you can do that. Now, the fact that these have colors means they're active and existing notes. You can add things and say you don't have a contact yet for somebody, but they were a presenter here, but you don't want to forget to give them a contact name. Then you can go ahead and do these brackets, add the name, and it'll stay grayed out, or a lighter color of purple in this case. And until you go back and add it in, or add that information in, it will still show in the graph, but it'll show grayed out. Kind of interesting. So what questions, what reactions do you have to this? Again, this is a lot of what will be covered in the class as we get further into it, but I've also already done content on this, and Nick Milo's done a lot. Dan Berg has done content on this. Vlad Campos, if any of you have watched his videos, he does a lot on this. I find it very useful. And the primary reason for that is because a lot of my work is relationship driven. Hold on just a second. I'm going to take a quick sip. So for me, when I was working with multiple schools and multiple campuses in a consortium, I had to try to remember from moment to moment who was doing what on what campus. And I was paper based at the time. So a lot of that was up here. And it was all in my head, as a matter of fact. And it was very hard sometimes to keep that straight. I really had to work hard, and I was much younger then. I mean, this was years ago when I had this kind of, uh, ability to really be able to connect the dots. And as a conversation was happening, being able to say, oh, yeah, this person is doing that at Knox College. Oh, did you know that so-and-so at Grinnell College is doing this other cool thing? And even now within Valpo, you know, professors working in engineering might be doing something really innovative that has implications in the humanities, or vice versa. Or you might have someone doing something in the sciences that impacts health sciences. And then how do you get those people talking? How do you make those connections? What Obsidian does is it allows me to replicate that mental cognitive process I always had in a very straightforward way digitally. And then I can not rely on my brain to constantly dig through and sort that information. Instead, what I can do is I can search for a term, or I can look at my contents, or I can look at an individual and see how they're connected to all of these different things. Someone walks into my office and said, who's working on 3D printing? And Rod, I know you're a big fan of 3D printing, and I can look up who's involved in the makerspace, who runs the makerspace, what types of projects have I been told about that use the makerspace. All of that I can now, I don't want to say pawn off, but push off into Obsidian in a lot of ways, so that I'm not having to keep those connections active continuously, nonstop in my head. So hopefully that makes some sense. Curse Platt asks, is there a way to generate voice transcribed into OBS with the mobile app? Quite frankly, Curse Platt, I am not the expert on OBS. This is running through Meld Studio right now. I usually do use OBS, and it's worked really well, especially the chat pop-up feature, which I am missing in this chat. So I do apologize again for the overlay not working. It worked last night, but for some reason I can't get it to come through. So I'll be working with Steve Seguin over at Video Ninja and seeing if I'm doing something wrong, which is more than likely the case. And hopefully in the future, we can have these overlays working as intended here, because I know Video Ninja should work correctly and pull that in. But oh, okay. Sorry about that, Gersplaid. So not OBS, Obsidian. Okay. Is there a way to generate voice transcribed into Obsidian with the mobile app? There's not. So for Obsidian, if you have Obsidian Sync, and I'll have to do some research on that, and I will. One thing I would encourage you to do is Obsidian has a very robust community, and they have a ton of community plugins as well. My guess would be that yes, there's a way to do that. I know that there's a way to add a voice note directly into Obsidian, so you can add in recordings. I happen to use their Obsidian Sync feature. I think it's well worth the money. I think I pay, as an educator, you can get it for $96 a year. I can't remember what the regular price is, but I'll drop those links again down in the details after we're all done today. But the big thing to remember about Obsidian is it's an open source platform, so you pay nothing for it proper. I pay for sync because I haven't found a great way to do it otherwise, and I don't mind giving back to the Obsidian community. Some people do use a sync thing, and they talk about that quite a bit as an alternative to paying Obsidian to use their sync feature. But Obsidian Sync just works. And it works on my mobile phone, it works on my computer at work, it works here on my local PC. All of your files are locally stored, and then basically all Sync does is move them from location to location and make sure that they stay local. So they don't maintain an actual they don't, it's not really a cloud service. It's more about moving things around and making sure that it stays up to date no matter where you're working on it. Now, I take it a step further and I store my Obsidian Vault locally on OneDrive on my PCs and on my phone. So that way I kind of have a dual redundancy. I have them locally stored, but that local copy is also OneDrive. And that then allows me to have a lot of different ways to engage with it. Now, it won't work if you leave OneDrive cloud synced. So you want to make sure you keep a local copy of those files. Hopefully that answered the question. I don't want to dive too deeply into the weeds on that, but it's something that I find really valuable and interesting. And then also, Obsidian is great for stuffing fleeting thoughts. I would like to hit a button on my phone or Palma to go straight to my vault. You can do that. And I mean, the Obsidian link is right there. So if you're using Sync and you open the Obsidian app, your vault is right there. And it's that easy. Now, it does take a little while to upload, especially once you get a large vault. It's going to take a while to sync those files and any changes you may have done, but that all happens in the background. So you can still do stuff while that's happening. And I think that that's what makes it such a powerful tool. Any other questions on Obsidian? This was just something fun and geeky I wanted to show. It's kind of a lot of fun for me because I really enjoy this type of thinking. And what you'll notice as I get further into these explanations and everything, and I do want to show one more time here the website before I pop out. You will notice that I have a bunch of different folders. And I'm still a folder driven guy. And I know that, a lot of people will tell you that the beauty of Obsidian, and I do believe this, the beauty of Obsidian is that you're making all of these seemingly random connections to other things. But you can also start with a base. You can start with a highly structured folder driven base, and that's what I do. So you'll notice here, all of my blogs are by year, by month, a lot of different folders here. All of my images are in a folder. My library, if I open that up, I've got my authors, my topics, but then I have the actual notes, which is what you see on the front end in that website. I am a big believer in redundancy and a big believer in being able to find things multiple ways. If tomorrow Obsidian was gone, all of my notes are still in folders. They're all there. So that means that even if Obsidian was gone and I had to go back to the old way of searching and finding and doing all of these things, I would be able to do that just by going through my file structure. So Obsidian adds another layer as far as making it a little bit more intuitive and easier to use and easier to add on the fly connections. But for the basic notes themselves, they still exist within files, within folders, because they're easy to find that way. Amber says, are you able to combine notes that you have already created? Amber, you might have to explain that a little bit. Uh, as far as in Obsidian, the notes are in Markdown, so you could easily copy from one note into another note and, basically merge those two. And actually, there's a merge feature within Obsidian that allows you to merge notes, so you can merge those. I haven't done that as much. Uh, I tend to leave everything kind of almost disjointed. The way I use my Supernote isn't like some people use their Supernote, where they have this long, huge notebook that has a bunch of headings and a huge table of contents. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't do it that way. I have individual meetings, individual notes, and then at the end of the year or at the end of a certain period of time, I will go back and say, for example, all of the meetings with one person, now that I know that I'm done with that, I will combine those into what I call an archival note. And it's one of my frustrations with Supernote is because you can't do that in a streamlined way. So I can't just merge those notes together. I have to go to the note, copy all of the contents. Now, the good thing is you can copy all pages and then paste those into one big long note. The cool thing about that is all of the headers, all of the headings, all of the keywords, all of the star marks you have, all of anything you've done in there transfers. So if I copy and paste into a different note, all of that is going to come in. And then it creates kind of that archival file. The reason I don't do that on the fly is I don't want to constantly be having to navigate as I'm doing all of these meetings. Plus, I like the fact that when I need them, they're tied to the date created so I can go to the calendar, find them easily. In an archive, I'm not as worried about that. I'm worried about accessing the information as a total. Awesome. Glad I got there, Amber. It's always hard because, there's a lot of ways that some people just use Obsidian and they just type and use notes that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong way to do any of this. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that whatever the flow is that you're in is the right one for you. Any other questions on Obsidian? And I'm sorry if I keep looking off to the side, but I still have to look over a little bit to be able to press the Stream Deck and get my scene changed. Uh, Eventually, I'll probably move that over a little bit differently so that it'll make it a little bit easier. Um, no problem, Kursplat. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it and the support. So the next thing that I have on the agenda, and again, keep popping in questions, whether it's about Obsidian, whether it's about the new class, happy to answer those. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that Rada has been making to the Supernote platform. And um, I think it's really they're doing something different, and some people love this and some people don't. And I kind of want to talk about that. I want to talk about whether or not you feel like these are the right moves. There's some discussion on Reddit that Supernote has kind of lost their way a little bit. I'm not sure that I agree, but I do think that they're definitely changing things. And I think that's important for them and us as people who may use the platform to kind of decide whether or not they're going far afield from their mission, whether or not they're just embracing what I think, and this is my own bias coming through, was kind of their intent to begin with, was this idea of if we're going to be for those who write, a lot of times with writing comes doodling, drawing, creativity. And over the years, it seems like they've started to say, okay, well, we're going to be for those who write. That's going to be our primary function. But there are all these other ways of expressing yourself that kind of spring from or move from writing, including mind mapping, which is a visual way to diagram different things, including drawing and using creative bullet journaling. And people want to be able to do that. So you get the stickers, even now to turning it into a Wacom tablet. Um, Rod says, speaking of syncing, we need to have syncing conversation as it pertains to e-ink. So what do you mean by that? Do you mean a syncing conversation, Rod, around um, like the different platforms and how they sync, or some kind of universal standard? Um, I think that I personally think that Remarkable has probably the most seamless sync experience, especially since you can edit on both ends of that. Of course, they charge extra for that. I think second, from what I've seen, syncing when it comes to um, Supernote, unless you're syncing multiple devices, which I know some people do, I don't. I have one device and I pretty much use that device. You get some conflict files occasionally, but very few since they've done the upgrades they've done. The nice part about it is it maintains all of the internal links. So if you create a table of contents on your device, you get that same table of contents over on the apps. Now you don't get it on the web yet, which I really want them to, kind of redo the web app to allow it to do that. But you also get, if you've done links, it's going to take you to those links. If you've done external links, it's going to pop you out into a browser. If it's very intuitive in the way it works. You also have the freedom then to do OneDrive or Google Drive and install the Supernote app on your desktop without logging in as a viewer for note files. Now, you can't follow links at that point because you're not logged into your account. So that's one trade-off you get. Yeah, and then Rod, I think it is going to be interesting to see where everybody goes with this. Books, I'm not as familiar with their cloud, so maybe Aaron or Rod, one of you all could jump in and, pop into the chat, or maybe cover this on a live or a video you all do about how we, may get to the point where there's some kind of universal standard where a note file is a note file, but it took Microsoft and Google a long time to come to somewhat of an agreement on how they can kind of share, and they're not really in agreement. Personally, I don't know how the Google overlay of Word works and how you can edit a Word document as a native format in Google, but you can. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know what the answer here is. It's convoluted right now. Everybody has their own thing. I would argue that as far as, just sheer functionality, that the Supernote, from what I can see, replicates the on-device experience second best to Remarkable. Now, I say second best only because you can still actively type and edit notes in the app on Remarkable. If Supernote allowed that, it would, by my estimation and everything that I've seen, read, watched, and I watch a lot of content, it would be that Supernote would be the leader in that pack because of the fact that all of the notebooks right now are searchable down to the keyword level, and it just works. It just really works. That's just my 2 cents. You all can take it for what it's worth, but I think that it's gonna be interesting to see where the industry goes, especially now that LCD providers, and I don't wanna say LCD providers, but now that, um, tablet providers with traditional LCD screens are trying to compete with e-ink. I mean, you look at the new, and I've lost the name on it, so if someone wants to help me out and drop it in the chat, this new e-paper, next paper screen. I don't know if it was Hanvon or whoever put that, or XP Pen, the new XP Pen tablet. I'm sorry, that is not an e-paper device. And I don't know if it's released to the public yet, but Kit did a early members early post where he just gets so frustrated with the thing. And, he's pretty unflappable in a lot of ways, but he just gets so frustrated with the fact that he can't even really write on it as well unless he's directly over it, looking directly down on it, because he can't get the angle right to make the screen do what it needs to do, because it's trying to use this reflective LCD technology. And e-ink doesn't suffer from that. It has other things, and it's not perfect for everyone, but it's not that problem. So anyway, I think that's kind of cool. Rod says, yeah, what was it? I saw you put in there. Yes, yes, yes. Love this new direction from Rada. And I do think, and I'm going to pop over here to the, sorry, I'm getting used to my buttons. So I'm going to go to the demo screen here. And again, I'm going to get rid of this crazy chat overlay so we don't have to worry about that. And so now what you're going to see, and get rid of my trusty editing software here. So here's what I was doing with the course. I had, kind of talking through, just to give you a little bit behind the scenes here, the toolkit. So when you get to the toolkit function, you're going to be able to see that it's a lot of different things happening as far as what I use and how I use it. But what's nice, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion about stickers. And yeah, Rod, XP Pen is trash. I don't know that it's trash. I wouldn't call it that. Brad Colbo did an excellent video on this, and I think Kit, from a note-taking perspective, was very clear that it's not what it's claiming to be. Brad kind of said, why wouldn't you just pay a little bit more and get the nicer drawing tablet? Because he doesn't see it in that note-taking space, really, although it's a little cheaper. So he's not sure either what the target market is. And I'm not either. I don't know. I haven't used it. Again, I'm in one ecosystem right now, but I think that, you know, everybody has a different thing that they do. And I want to be really clear that, I'm not saying that it's trash as far as it's a bad product, but does it do what it says it's going to do? And does it do it in a way that makes the most sense for what you're trying to do? So that's kind of, my take as far as a hot take on that. But one thing, and the stickers get a lot of uh, bad press here. And for those of you who didn't see the, let me get to something here. As a matter of fact, let's just do it within this page. For those of you who haven't seen Voya's video yet on the stickers, he was giving off um, Bob Ross vibes to me. So those of you who grew up when I did at a certain time get this idea of Bob Ross and the happy little trees. When Voya was drawing his amoeba, I was getting happy little tree vibes. And I think that when you look at that and you say, wow, this is a little bit crazy, uh, it was just pretty cool. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit, because my camera reset. It was zoomed in. Let me see if I can get zoomed in a little bit. There we go. So now we'll get out of that. All right. Hopefully that is better for everybody. Now, what's nice about this, and the stickers, like I said, happy little trees. So if anybody has a Bob Ross meme they want to throw in, go ahead. But the reason to me stickers are so important is because they allow a lot of different things. Again, I've talked about the fact that I added some basic shapes, or I took an existing shape and then modified that slightly to create a new sticker. But not even just that. For those of us who aren't artistic, yeah, you may see these as not as uh, professional as what you would like to have, but maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you want something a little bit more fun, a little bit more whimsical, and a little bit more quote unquote artistic. Hey, She, good to see you. And if that's the case, these work really well for you. But you can also customize these. You could start with these as a blank canvas. And a lot of times, what gets lost, at least I think in my trying to explain this, is that people have called them clip art, Rod, but they're really not, because all of these are so much more than that. They do a lot of different things. I'm trying to find the one that I would use to customize and that I was marking up with the other day just to play with here in a minute. But so, as a matter of fact, let's do a new note, because if I don't do a new note, then it's not going to let me have this. So let's do a new note. Let's do a standard note, because that's where you get the most customizability with stickers. It is not clip art, Aaron. I know that that's a big contention, and there are going to be people who disagree with me on this all the way through. But if you look at the built-in stickers, and let's say that I want to go in and I want to let me find one here that's good for this. Oh, there's a good one. So let's go with the clock. Let's just go ahead and pop the clock in. I'm trying to do this from the side, so give me a second. So now on most platforms, you would think that this is a static image, that that's all it is. But that's not the case with the stickers. And that's why it's hard. And, Amber, you said, I'm not sure how to add a picture, but they're just little emojis. But they're not. Because if I go in here and I pop in and I go to my regular eraser, let's make it a little bit bigger. And let's say that I want this clock to only be on the quarter of the hour. So I can go in and erase individual components of this sticker. You can't do that with just a plain image. Now, maybe I'm wrong there, and you all tell me if I am, but I'm pretty sure you can't. That changes the way that this works. So I can start with this base, and now I just have the quarter of the hour. And then if I wanted to, I could then go to a pen and I could draw my hands with the line feature. And now I've created a new image. And I think that's the difference with this. And this is of course this is ultimate control, so you can get really fine with these details and pretty it up, change it, do it a different way. But you could also use this now because it's not an image. Well, because it's not an image, if I circle this, I can now turn this into a heading, I can turn it into a link, and I can do a sticker. Now, one thing you can't do, but you can do in the handwriting recognition notes, is you could then turn it into a keyword and a bunch of other things. So it's pretty cool. But you can also add in, so I could say, this is my clock. Now, when I go to select it, I can create a new sticker and save it in a collection. So again, it's maybe to some of you, you see that as clip art. I don't remember clip art. I'm a big fan of Clippy at the time, but I don't remember clip art being something that you could actually go in, erase, manipulate, and alter. Resize, mirror, all those other things. This doesn't allow you to mirror, but it allows you to do most of that. That's different. But this specific thing allows you to do a lot of other stuff. Amber says, I love the sticker option. That's the beauty of Supernote. You don't have to. Oh, it's because Rod had said, it Rants About Tech had said, I've been fighting this battle since the release. You're not going to win this one. Well, quite frankly, Rod, you've already lost this one because unless clip art has changed definition, this isn't that, my friend. Now, we can agree to disagree, but it is a different thing. Now, you can agree on how customizable and functional it is. That's open to interpretation by anybody. I personally, I like this kind of stuff because I'm not an artist, so this doesn't bother me. And the fact that you can export and share these makes it even more fun. Think about it this way, Rod, or anybody. If Pixel Leaves were to go all in on drawing custom stickers, how many people in the chat would buy that tomorrow? I would. I'm just going to say it. I would, because that's she does phenomenal work with all of the things she does on these devices. And if she created a custom sticker pack and put that out there and said, here's what I use, here's how I do things, that shows the value add of the Supernote platform. And to Amber's point, you don't have to. Nothing on the Supernote is a have to. You don't have to use tags. You don't have to use stars. You don't have to use anything you want, but you can use everything. I know one thing I believe Rod talks about a lot is not having checkboxes that are taggable or that can be turned into to-do items. Guess what? You can do that now. In the handwriting recognition note, you can actually, and of course, this isn't going to work in this one, but if you go and you're in real-time recognition notes, you can actually use your sticker to create a new event or a new task with the text that's inside it. And you can add it as a keyword, and you can tag it with multiple keywords. So it just gives you a lot of different ways to be able to engage with the device. So if you're looking for to-do, just general to-dos, you can tag every single checkbox as a to-do, as a keyword. Go to the search, hit keyword, hit to-do, and you will see every single checkbox. You can also tag that checkbox combined with text as an individual to-do item in your to-do list so that you can access it from the tasks. That's a really powerful feature. And I think that that's what gets lost with where I think Supernote is kind of going with this is there are a lot of options they haven't even explored yet. They worked a long time on this. They mentioned this back to me, stickers, and I didn't know what they were talking about when we were waiting on the Manta. So when we were waiting on the Manta to be released, there was a lot of speculation about a lot of things, and I know that's why I know they're working actively on this idea of split screen that's actually been updated on the roadmap to say it's in progress. You also have where they've instituted this new Wacom layer so that this can be turned, or not new Wacom layer. They've made this now so that you can turn this into a Wacom tablet and draw on your screen in the apps. And one thing I mentioned in Voya's video, and this happened to me, and I think Rod, if I remember right, it happened to you. If you try to use this with an Adobe product, the latency is awful. So the first thing I did when this was announced is I went into Illustrator and I thought, oh, I'm going to draw around on a couple of things and I'm going to see what this looks like. Latency was awful. Didn't work well, lots of problems. Don't know what the issue is with that. I think it may be something with app optimization because then I came home and when I started my vacation, or I don't even know if I'd gotten on vacation by that point, I tried it on Word or on PowerPoint using the ink functionality that's in PowerPoint. So you have that pen input layer worked flawlessly. Pressure sensitivity was there. The ability to use the entire screen, so not just the slide, but right on the entire screen, worked very well. So I think some of it may come down to the latency or to the app you're using. So it'll be interesting if someone like a Brad Colbo or if Kit, when he gets to the point now that it's out of beta, uses this to draw and what that looks like for somebody who's in that space. I'm not. And I don't want to pretend that I am because there's no point in that. There are other people who are better at that than I am. Aaron from 2530 Media says stickers are fun. I just don't see a real use case for them, at least for me. The power is using it as a keyword or tag and still driven by text you can attach to it. No, Aaron, actually, for some reason, and I don't know why, and maybe that's a RADA thing, but you make a good point. If you, the way it works is if it's in a hand recognition note, or a real-time recognition note, it's seen as strokes the same way as it is in the other note, but those strokes then become identifiable as if you drew text that couldn't be identified, if that makes sense. So a lot of times you'll see that when you're writing and you go to real-time recognition, it'll think that I drew a crescent, or it'll think that I drew a smiley face, or whatever it is. These stickers, once they're in that environment, become taggable as you don't have to enter text into them. I showed that as an example to kind of help, with text recognition, but you don't have to. So if I go back out, let me pop back over here a second and I'll show this because I think that's an important point, and I think that that's something that we should identify. So if you go, and let's go back to a real-time note, and let's go to create, and let's go ahead and pop a sticker in really quickly. And this time, let's do this guy. So we'll pop in this guy, and we will make him bigger. And you see that keyword function now is already there. It's live. Oh, sorry, I went to the wrong thing, everybody. This is what happens on a live. So let's go back to demo. All right. Now you should see my screen pop back up. Apologies for that. So what's going to happen is when you're here, you're going to see that now before this was grayed out because we were not in a real-time recognition note. Now it's there. And if you go here, your new task and new event is there. Both of those things are available for the sticker. So if I go to keyword and recognize, and let's say that I want this to be a new sticky note. Now remember, I can add as many things as I want here. And then I add, let's say I want it to be a to-do as well. And then I go ahead and I get out. Now when I go down to my global search and I want to search by keyword, and then I want to search just notes because that'll make the search a little bit faster. And then I want to go to do because I had that saved. Now what's going to happen here is you're going to see this pop up. It's going to find that image. So there are my notes that have to do in them. So this is a to do note that I tagged something else. But then here are two stickers that I've done as examples. That is not the same as, what I think you were talking about. Now, I could be wrong. Let me know inside. But the idea that now all of this, any icon, or I called it an icon, Rod will be happy about that. But any sticker that I want can become a to-do or a task or a keyword or a header is totally different than just being an image. Hopefully that makes some sense. But thanks for bringing it up because sometimes that I think gets lost in translation. And no matter how many times I say it or I've tried to show it in a video, it just doesn't come through all the time. Amber says I use them as visual markers. I can remember where a note is. If I have to doodle by it, then I can create it faster. I think it comes from my high school days when the clock wasn't, or when e-ink wasn't a thing. Absolutely. And I think that that's where this can be a really interesting conversation because this goes down that path, kind of what I was talking to earlier of, is Rada really moving away? Are they having mission creep? I don't think so. I think they started with the base, which was how do we get people to be able to take notes? How do we make the best note-taking experience we can? And then they said, well, what comes along with notes sometimes? Well, some people like to doodle. Some people like to, manually add a little bit of bordering or shading or, just draw random things throughout their notes. Some people like to do a star mark. Some people like to add a little image next to something that they're writing. How can we take that to the next level? How can we take that and say, okay, we're not just going to do the thing, but we're going to improve on the thing. We're going to make it different. We're going to bring it into the digital space and make sure you can do as many things as possible with that. That's my take. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. And then Aaron says again, from a functional or productive standpoint, I'd rather have split screen instead of stickers, but this is from viewpoint someone who wouldn't use the stickers. True, Aaron, and I think that's where the biggest debate right now in the Supernote community is about what to prioritize. For me personally, I wouldn't have prioritized stickers. I think split view is going to be a big deal. I think that they're working on it for a reason. I don't know if it will come out this year because I know that they're working behind the scenes on an A4 size device. And to me, that's where that makes the ultimate sense. I still think it would be valuable on the A5. Don't get me wrong. I think if the Manta had it, I would use it. But the harder part on that, the smaller the device gets, the harder the split view is to really use in a functional way. Unless you have good enough eyesight, and unfortunately, I don't anymore. So I have to, kind of really pick and choose what I want to do. Now, if I was using Kindle or if I was reading a book, now not PDFs, not where I need that extra real estate, but if I was reading a book, to be able to have split view, to be able to take notes on the fly about that book, genius. And I think it would be welcomed by the Supernote community. So there are things like that. There are things like, being able to write on the daily calendar view. That's something we've been wanting for a long time, having multiple calendars. So there's this debate around, do we keep innovating? Do we keep trying new things? Or do we uh, double down on the existing things and try to make them perfect? And I'm kind of two minds on that. One is, yes, you want to constantly be looking to the next thing and expanding the functionality of the device while also trying to, as much as possible, take care of that core. Now, what I would argue is that by creating these stickers, which you may not use or someone else may not use, there was a large market, especially among bullet journalers, who wanted this. And I always try to think about who the market is and how many requests they may get and what is actually going to do the most good for the most people. And to me, this could very well be one of those features that was most requested, not at the roadmap level, because not everybody goes to Trello and looks at the roadmap, but by people to them, because they have their own internal marketing and metrics. So that's just my take, but I agree with you that, this isn't going to be for everyone. I also think that's why they went ahead with using the Wacom layer. I think they were getting a lot of heat for the price of the Manta, which in some ways, quite frankly, folks, I don't get. I get it a little bit, but I don't get it either, because a lot of the biggest problem with the pricing is for people in and now coming to the US market with the new tariff structure, but previously had been because of import duties and import taxes and things that were out of the control of the company. I still think the Go 10.3 is the most economical choice, hands down, because it comes with everything in the package if you buy it directly from books. If you buy it from Amazon, it's a different story, but it's easier to return. But as far as what you get, I don't think that this price is out of range at all. I think, especially if you're upgrading, because let's say you have a Supernote device already, it's still functioning. Somebody buys that off of you for $200. You don't sell them the pen, or you don't bundle in the pen, or you have multiple pens. And then you can get this device without having to buy a new pen. So you take $80 off right there. So, and if you do or do not want the half folio, you could get the device for, I think it's $429 right now. Maybe it's $449. I'd have to look that up. But that's not bad for this target, for this demographic, for what you get with the platform. Again, if you're in the books ecosystem, that changes everything, because one thing about all these devices is the ecosystem matters. Once you're in it, it's very hard to get out, and that thing, I think, goes to kind of that overarching thing, syncing conversation or file transferability. If I was out of the Supernote ecosystem tomorrow, I'd have to figure out what to do with all of my notes. I'd get them all out, put them in Obsidian, and use them as Markdown. So digitally, I'd be fine. The handwritten copies moving forward would be the harder thing to deal with. Let's see. Sheing says, or wait a minute. Got behind on the chat, folks. Sorry about this. Rand says, that's why I love books implementation so much. It uses boxes graphically as a header. Good for my graphic-driven brain. I'd have to see that again, Rod, to know what that exactly what we're talking about there, because I think that with the stickers, I'm wondering why you couldn't do the same thing, why you couldn't just create your own boxes and then use those as your headers. Truth is, you could create one icon, or you could create one sticker and keep that and just paste that in. Or you could, quite frankly, create a table of contents and have multiple layers with multiple things. Uh, Again, I'd have to see kind of what you're talking about, and I know you've done a video on it at some point, so I may go back and look. Amber, haha, it's me. I'm the bullet journaler. Well, and and I'm not. So that's where, that perspective is really important because I don't bullet journal. I mean, I use my little arrows and I bullet my points when I'm taking notes, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, you know, I don't have an icon for that, but I could see this being used to create a lot of different things. Aaron says, I see it's similar to books. You can add an icon or emoji as an actual tag. The difference is Supernote has more options with the stickers. Books will only recognize certain drawings. There you go, Aaron. I think from what it sounds like, you hit the nail on the head. Um, the difference between the two is that you know, books is treating it like an image or like an emoji. Supernote's not. Supernote is treating it like as if it were text, and it's ignoring the fact that it just happens to be an image. And that's hard to get your head around. At least it was for me. That's why I didn't understand it when they kind of described it to me. And I think that that's why it was so much fun to watch people like Voya use it and for me to play with it myself because I think it's a really functional tool for a lot of people when you start looking at it that way. Hey, Carl, how are you? Um, and Carl says it's always best to spring forwards off a solid foundation. Personally, I'd like to see them tie up a few loose ends. Yeah, Carl, and I know I do have something that you might be interested to know, and this came up. I actually found out if you plug in your Supernote device, they keep a temp folder on device to help make sure that there's no data loss, and it basically keeps a temp backup on device of your notes. And I know specifically, Carl, you were having trouble with uh, like your total space, like space issues on your device and storage. Check into that. If you can plug that in via USB and you go to the export, mine was under export, but you try to find a .temp folder, that had a lot of duplicate notes that I had already gotten rid of. And I deleted that. And so maybe since you're running up against that storage limit, that storage quota that they have, that might alleviate some of your concerns. Anyway, everybody, sorry about that. I had to jump in because Carl had asked that question a lot, and it came up as I was talking to Supernote about a support ticket I had where the temp file showed up on my app, on my desktop app, and I had never seen it. And they explained to me that it's on device and it must have come through and went to the desktop app. Didn't show on the cloud, it didn't show anywhere else. It just showed on the desktop app. And if you plug it in, they said through the USB and open it in your PC Explorer. If you're on a Mac, that would be Finder. You should be able to see the temp file and eliminate that. And I mentioned that they should say that to users because people are having this issue of coming up against storage quota limits. So anyway, for what it's worth, they may make an announcement. I kind of got ahead of them there, but it's not really something they were trying to keep secret. They just didn't think about telling anybody. Um, Aaron says, as emojis. I don't know what that means. The stickers, yeah, they kind of look like emojis, and some of them, are, but at the same time, they're strokes. I have so much fun with you all. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so I appreciate you being here today. It's a lot of fun. Nizoni, welcome, Nizoni. I'm late to the conversation, but I'm so with Amber. Awesome. Yeah, go back and watch the replay when we get there. But we're having the great sticker debate, and I think that it's really it's a lot of fun because this community and the reason that I've had so much fun doing all of this over the last year plus is because I don't think any of us take ourselves too seriously. I mean, Rod, tell me if I'm wrong, but you've known me for a while. I know what I know, and I'm usually pretty clear about saying when I don't know what I know. And I also feel like when I don't know, I can ask without feeling like someone's going to treat me like, well, why didn't you know that? How couldn't you know that? I feel like this is a really fun community around here. And so that's why it's so important. And that's why, you go back to the beginning of the stream with the class. That's why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. This started as a hobby, a fun thing, for me to learn skills. Next thing you know, I've got people asking me more questions, and I'm doing more and more things. And then we end up with today in this fun stream. So it's just a lot of fun for me. Um, Sheeing says recently went from the Go 10.3 to the Mana, and it took time. It does 100%. That goes back, I think, to what I was talking about earlier, which is once you're in an ecosystem, it's hard to get out. I kind of, you kind of want to go and find that clip from The Godfather Part 3. Not the best of the Godfather movies, but still good. And where Pacino's like, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. It's kind of like that. It's like you can't really escape without some pain. And I think that's kind of a big deal. So, Carl, you said 20 gig of usable space. Are you talking about the temp files? I'm not 100% sure there. Uh, Rod, thank you. Seriously, this has been great. Aaron, no books recognizes some drawings as emojis. Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification. Uh, yeah, and Rod, 100%. It's okay not to know something. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this whole space. And, I do want to talk real quick because something came up recently. I don't know if any of you have, and I'm going to end the stream here soon, but right now we're going pretty good and I'm enjoying this conversation. But I want to talk for a minute about a couple of other things. I'm going to go back down to this top-down camera shot just because I want to see. Let me get here. So let me get the Manta off of the desk and I'm going to put these up. So if any of you have been following here recently, you've seen that Jeff Moss got the Highbreak Pro and that Kit also got the Highbreak Pro. I ordered it. I actually ordered it, pulled the trigger, was going to get it. And then as they were delayed in shipping them and as I stewed on it, as I thought about it, I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to buy at this stage an e-ink phone. And the reason being, I can't find a use case for me for that particular thing. I don't know what it would replace. I thought, okay, well, I'll try to replace my current smartphone. But then I got to thinking about it. I'm not a huge gamer and I don't do a bunch of things on the smartphone, but when I need to watch a video or when I need to consume content or when I need to find something, my phone can serve that purpose. And that's where this idea of intentional tech for me comes up. It's very important to know why you have the devices you have. The same here is these two things. I have the Mobi Scribe Wave here on the right, the black and white edition, which, by the way, on Amazon is still marked up to regular price, but on the Mobi Scribe website, it's down to $119. That is a tremendous value for this little tablet. I don't use it to write on. I use it as a dedicated reader. So for me, I can read Kobo, I can read Kindle, I can read absolutely anything I want to on this device, and I don't have to worry about being trapped into an ecosystem. Now, I got lucky and got it for $99. Right now, it's $119. Still a great value, in my opinion. you can also use it to take notes. It's got a decent calendar. It's got decent note-taking app. It's got the full Google Play experience. So you can do a lot of things on it. I use it for one thing, and for the price I paid for it, it was well worth that. Still love my Kobo Aura, but again, that traps me in the Kobo ecosystem. This is my newest purchase, and many of you have seen. I'm going to try and pull this up so you can see it a little bit better on screen. So this is my, I just lost the name on it. My terminal. Sorry. So terminal, I saw them in Kickstarter. I reached out to them in Kickstarter and I said, here, I'm interested in this, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to do about it. And they got back to me. They were going to send me a unit. It never happened. But then I saw it launch and I was like, man, this really has me interested. It has me thinking that this could be an intentional piece of technology that I could use on a daily basis. And it's not intrusive at all. So right now I've got a quote of the day on one side. This is what they call a mashup. You can have a full screen display. You can have a mashup. You can do a lot of different things with it. And then on the other side, I have days past and days till the end of the year. And then this cycles through different things. And you have different things that pop up every 32 minutes. You can sync it with your calendars, Google or Outlook, and you can sync multiple calendars to it. The only piece of frustration is their clock, because the clock only refreshes when the screen refreshes. So if you look at it within that 32-minute span, it's wrong. It's never right. They're looking at a possible way to have that fixed, but they don't want it to refresh constantly either, and I do get that. But the point being that this is an intentional piece of technology. This will last me 6 months on the charge it's got. Right now, I think when I last did a video on it, it was at 81%, and last I checked, it was down to 75%, and that's after it sitting on my desk for several weeks. Really cool piece of technology that is non-intrusive, but allows me to see my information at a glance, and it rotates that information, and I can change it up, and I can have different schedules for different days. You can do groups. Let's see what's going on over in the chat here really quick. Shing says, Carl, good point. I think expandable storage should be the norm on these devices. If they aren't going to get huge native memory, you should be able to expand. Yeah, Shing, and I think that's a good point. It's the biggest issue with Carl's workflow is he does a ton of linking and has a lot of PDF files. And so I think that the problem with the Supernote, and Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, is it doesn't allow two-way linking between the SD card and the core drive. And if you did that, it would alleviate his issue, because you can go up to 2 terabytes on the expandable storage. But that's not how it works. So that's causing some frustration. And I know that Supernote is looking into it. I have my own personal opinions on whether or not it's safe to be able to, or whether or not it's wise, not from a standpoint of storing information on an SD card, but if it's keeping real-time files on there from if that SD card was to fail. What I would hate to see is for someone who's using that as just an extension of the hard drive or the base drive, to have them lose their data because they hadn't had that backed up, because it doesn't sync currently to the app either. So really, you're kind of flying in uncharted territory there. But 100%, I think that they've got to figure out. But again, ink, it depends what you use your device for. 4 years in on my Supernote, I'm using almost nothing. I'm not even to the halfway point yet, and I have thousands of notes. So again, it depends. But if you're using a lot of PDFs, a lot of things, and I know Carl does as an example, I think that there needs to be a solution for that. And I think Supernote has started going down that path, and hopefully they'll get further down that path. Let's see. Shing says, my Wave is very fun for reading and basic notes. I got it cheap and I'm not worried about it getting broken. That is 100% true. This device is probably one of the sturdiest devices I've ever held in my hand, and it's waterproof. So you could take this to the beach, you could accidentally drop it in the pool. It is really great for that. And from a reading perspective, it is so crisp, so clear. And the only issue I have is with the Kindle app and the page turn animation. To borrow a phrase from Rod, it's trash. I mean, it's just it flickers and gets all pixelated. Pixelated's the wrong word, but it gets just all muddied, and it takes it a minute to clear itself up. That is a horrible experience, and it's not consistent. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But once you're on the page, it's beautiful, and the text is so easy to read. It has the built-in front light, so you can read with it in bed. It's super light. It's just a great device. I like it a lot. Let's see here. Aaron at 2530 Media says, I'm trapped in the Kindle ecosystem, but I'm totally okay with it. I actually was in Kindle first, and I love Kindle. I think it's great, but Melissa bought me a Kobo and I fell in love with their device. I just did. It's so intuitive. It's easy. Their OneDrive, or not OneDrive, their Overdrive at the time, now Libby integration, is next to none. I mean, it's better than anybody else. If you're in the US, you can send a Kindle from Libby and get your library books that way. But Kobo is so much better because as you're browsing their store, if you click on a book, it'll say, get from Overdrive, get from your local library. So you don't have to do multiple things. You can just rent that book if it's available, or borrow that book if it's available, directly from the app. And now it's on your device. And it's all seamless and just works really, really well. I fell in love with Kobo from that point on, and now I have books in both places. And of course, I use Project Gutenberg, which is a free open source book provider, and you know, pretty cool stuff. And last couple of things here, and then I'm going to take off, folks, and be done. But I do want to hit these last couple of pieces of chat. Shing says, I don't mind being locked in to Amazon's ecosystem for my books unless it means I need to use their scribe to take notes on my book. It seems so expensive. Yeah, you can't take notes on the book. I think eventually down the road, they may open up their notes app similar to how they've done everything else with the Kindle app, so that you can use other devices for that, but they're not doing that anytime soon. I think they put too much into the scribe. Nozoni, have you had any problems with PDF and Kindle book front page not showing up correctly on your Manta? No, I haven't. I don't generally use the Kindle for PDF viewing. I tend to use the native reader for that, so I haven't seen that issue. But I have, and I've noticed nothing with the Kindle. And the Kindle just got an update, the Kindle app on the Manta, which now supports vertical scrolling, and it's a much smoother experience than it had been. So I would definitely suggest checking that out. And I did a small video on that the other day. Yeah, as far as the terminal interface on the web, it's not great. It's better if you do it on a desktop. If you do it on your desktop computer, it really works okay. It's not great, but it works. On your phone, don't. Just for your own sanity, to not get as many gray hairs as I've got, don't. It's not worth it. Rod will tell you, it's no, just stay away, just run. But anyway, everybody, thank you all so much. I appreciate so much you being here. We've gone over quite a bit. For those of you who stayed the entire time, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to check out the course, please go over to Patreon. I will update the details here, and you'll be able to see how you can purchase that. Follow me on all of my different platforms, subscribe, become a member. Look forward to seeing you all in the next chat, and we'll get some of these technical pieces worked out. But also let me know down, whether it's you're watching this live or it's on the replay, let me know down in the comments how this platform, other than the technical thing with the overlay of the chat, how you found it. Was this as good as my OBS setup? Was it better? Did it seem to work as well? I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts. But thank you all so much. You have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now.